So given that cos of alpha is negative 4/5, determine the other primary trig ratios.
The green light.
Well, thank you. It's good to find out now. All right, so given that cos alpha is negative 4/5, first of all, if we think about our past rule, if cos is negative, we could say it could happen in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. Right? If it was in quadrant 2, you could label the reference angle. Since the angle's alpha, I would label it as alpha r, the reference angle for alpha. And I know that my adjacent over hypotenuse would be 4/5. And it could also be that it's in quadrant 3. I go back to my nearest x-axis. I label my reference angle, and adjacent over hypotenuse would be 4/5. And trig questions, especially as we get into higher math, they like using these special triangles. Do you recognize the special 3, 4, 5 triangle? You could do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. But it's a famous triangle. And if you recognize it, you can just write 3, 4, 5 right away. So the question in part A, it says, determine the other primary trig ratios. So for example, they want us to find out what sine alpha is, and they want us to find out what tan of alpha is. If you look at your reference angle, does it make sense that sine is the opposite side over the hypotenuse? Does it matter which one I look at? You see that the opposite is 3 on both of them, and the hypotenuse is 5 on both of them. So it's going to be 3/5 as far as numbers go. Should it be positive or should it be negative? Could be either. So you'd have to write plus or minus. Because in quadrant 2, the sign could be positive. But in quadrant 3, the sign would be negative. So we don't know if it's in quadrant 2 or 3. We'd have to put both. Tan is going to be the opposite side over the adjacent side. In quadrant 3, it would be positive, right? But in quadrant 2, it'd be negative, so we have to put plus or minus again. B. To the nearest degree, find the possible values for alpha. This is the nice thing about drawing the picture, right? From 0 to 360, can you see that these are the two answers? Those are the two answers for alpha that are possible. What do we have to do first before we can find those purple ones? We have to find our reference angle first. How do we find our reference angle? We solve the exact same equation, but make it positive. So again, 3 important stars. Maybe I'll write ratio because finding the reference angle is the same as grade 10 trigonometry. Grade 10 trigonometry, you have an actual triangle and you solve for things in the actual triangle. It is impossible to draw an actual triangle with side lengths that are negative. So when you're solving for an actual triangle, all the side lengths would have been positive. You would never write sine, cos, or tan with a negative. So when finding our reference angle, we're always using the positive value. We go to our calculator, okay? And we would do second cos inverse of 4 divided by 5. 36, does it say to round something? nearest degree, so 37 degrees. Now I'm going to go to purple, because purple is the actual angle. Can you see that this angle, well, all halfway around would be 180 degrees. That would be too far. I'd have to subtract my reference angle. So 180 minus 37, 143 degrees. And in quadrant 3, this angle would be 180, would get me halfway around, plus my reference angle. 180 plus 37, 217 degrees. Circle question number 13. And I'll give you a little bit of time to work on this homework and the homework from yesterday.